Welcome back. Pam Huff joins us now with a special report and a look ahead at what's coming up on today's Focus at 4. Good morning, Pam.
Good morning to you, Honora. This community has a deadly, dirty secret. I want you to forget marijuana, meth, even cocaine. Heroin has taken over as the drug of choice. This year alone, it has claimed 36 lives in Jefferson County, another 15 in Shelby County, and 5 in Tuscaloosa County. None of the victims was an inner-city drug user. In fact, the dead are all young white men and women from Birmingham suburbs who are dying in vain.
We all thought that heroin was something that happened in the 60s.
It is becoming the drug of choice.
Heroin definitely is in Shelby County.
Do we have an issue here?
No question about it.
We're seeing younger people that are trying it for the first time.
They are walking around with blinders on if they think that we don't have a heroin issue in the Birmingham area, because we do.
In this community, drug dealers sell Mexican brown heroin. The heroin is cut, bagged, and stamped in heroin mills similar to this one, often in Atlanta, and then makes the journey to Birmingham. That's where a border war begins for Hueytown Police Chief Chuck Hagler.
A lot of it comes into West Birmingham, comes into Bessemer, comes into Brighton, and we're the closest, most convenient, most readily available customer base.
And the customers?
It's everywhere in Pleasant Grove, Hueytown, all these surrounding areas. It's everywhere.
I've seen people as young as 15 with their parents doing it.
But why heroin? Why now? Simple answer, the community has seen a shift in drug availability.
The supply of cocaine has dried up to some extent. It's become more expensive. Heroin is being trafficked in, and it's inexpensive, and it takes a small amount for a user to get a high-quality high.
For many heroin users, the problem started in a home medicine cabinet.
Really, the most pressing issue we have in our community and across the United States is the abuse of prescription drugs, and then that is a gateway drug, and it often leads to the abuse of heroin.
Alrighty.
DEA drug take-back programs like this one collect hundreds of pounds of Oxycontin, oxycodone, and other opiate synthetic painkiller drugs. These medications were obtained legally, but often are stolen from parents or grandparents. The secondary user, a high school or college student. Pharmaceutical companies fought back by changing the formula.
Some changes were made in the process of some of those drugs that made it impossible to do what they had done, which was grind them down, heat them up, melt them, and inject them.
No pills? No problem. A bag of heroin is cheaper than a pill. Here's the dirty secret every drug user knows. You don't know what you're buying.
No, you never know what you're getting.
In 2001, the average purity level of heroin in the United States was 13%. Today, it's between 30 and 35%.
Obviously, that is extremely dangerous for the user because they don't know what level of purity they're getting. And if they're not used to 30% pure heroin and they inject that in their arm, that's what's causing the overdose deaths. Their system can't take it, and they literally die with a needle in their arm.
Pam Huff, ABC 3340. Well, 1 in 6 high school seniors thinks that it would be easy to obtain heroin. And you know what? They're not wrong. Today on Focus at 4, our series Dying in Vain continues. We're going to introduce you to the young suburban heroin user. The question, do you have one in your home?
Well, parents can overlook a lot. A teenager who smokes a joint, pops a pill, drinks a little too much is just experimenting. And over the mountain communities, that is, there isn't much of a drug problem. For the sake of your child and your family, please wake up. The drug flowing through the veins of many young men and women in affluent communities is not alcohol, but heroin. 90% of the heroin users in this community are from white affluent homes, and their drug of choice leads to many of them dying in vain. Pam Huff has the report.
We haven't really seen heroin affecting our high school students that we know of. But here's the bottom line. It's in the community. If it's in the community, if it's not in the high school yet, it will be.
If I've told you that there was there was heroin on a school campus, I would probably be stretching that. You know, I don't know that that would be a fact, but I do know it's in the high school environment.
We absolutely have to get the word out through our community organizations, our civic organizations, our churches, the faith-based communities in the school districts. Because if we don't have a problem in the school districts, I assure you that a problem is right around the corner.
Heroin, a drug of the 60s, has come back more potent, more powerful than ever. Its newest target is your son or daughter.
And what we are seeing is a shift from what people would think as the traditional chronic heroin user that is an inner city user to what we're now seeing today is a young suburban user.
DEA Assistant Special Agent Clay Morris has investigated heroin operations across the United States. Morris says this area right now is at a critical mass for heroin overdose deaths.
There's not really one community in the Jefferson, Shelby County areas that hadn't been touched by an overdose death this past year.
How difficult is it to get a bag of heroin?
It's extremely easy.
Tell me how you go about doing that.
There's people, you can go to certain spots. Everybody knows those certain spots that you go to, and they're there. They're right there waiting for you. Everybody knows the same phone numbers. You call those numbers, they tell you where to go. It's easy. It's very easy.
They know the code words: sugar, dog food, smack, and they've got to have it.
I would steal from my family, steal from my friends. I'd steal from drug dealers that I knew were selling it just because, I mean, that's all you're worried about. You're not worried about the repercussions of what you're doing. You're worried about that high.
Chasing the next high becomes what the addict lives for. The need for more and more heroin grows. So does the cost of the addiction to society.
But I would say that the majority of burglars that we catch are drug addicts, and the last couple that we've arrested were heroin addicts. The last one that hit us pretty hard.
Is that the one over in Bluff Park?
Sure was. Bluff Park community, Vestavia, kicking indoors. Was a heroin addict, just needed the fix, was stealing whatever he could steal during the day, selling it, getting the money for the fix that night, was back at it the next day.
Okay, maybe that's the life of an older addict, someone in his 20s. But your child, never.
You just identified the conversation that always happens. No, my child wasn't doing heroin. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it. Even if they suspect it in the death, they don't want to say those words.
Area law enforcement wants to shout this message to every parent.
They need to intervene quickly. They need to intervene intensely. It's a life or death struggle. They shouldn't think that someone is going to grow out of this.
Now, coming up today on Focus at 4, one family's personal struggle to save their son. He came so close to dying in vain.
Pam Huff joins us now with part 3 of a special report and a look at what's coming up on Focus at 4. Hi, Pam.
Hi, Linda. You know, many parents, a favorite Bible verse comes in handy. It is Proverbs 22:6, which says, "Train a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it." The couple you're about to meet followed the scripture. What they didn't count on was the devil that almost killed their son, heroin. Now, they admit it is very difficult to tell their story, but they feel compelled to do so to help save others from dying in vain.
Don't be deceived, as we were.
Rick and Cheryl Kelly now live in Atlanta, but they raised their family in Shelby County. Their son was a smart, talented child.
For our son, sports was a very important part of his life, and it's something I enjoyed with him.
He also loved music, even formed a band. Then, in his junior year, 2 close friends died, and a devastating leg injury took him out of the sport he loved and put him on medication.
We don't know if that possibly could have been the beginning of some prescription abuse.
This happy child became distant,
troubled.
His circle of friends changed. Everything about him changed.
Still, he graduated and moved to Auburn to begin college. One night, Rick Kelly got a phone call from Auburn police.
He informed me that they had our son on videotape selling marijuana to an undercover officer.
The Kellys hired a lawyer. Their son got youthful offender status and 3 years probation.
We kept a lot of this from most of our family, even because we were embarrassed.
What they didn't want to admit was that while at Auburn, their son got hooked on heroin.
Did he ever
Steal from you?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
He stole pills from his grandparents. He very often took money out of our account, took things from the house, sold them, you know.
Well, and he sold drugs at Auburn so he could pay for his
own.
habit.
Yeah.
Yes. As parents, you keep wondering, when are we going to get to the bottom of
To
all
hit
of
bottom.
this?
When is he going to hit bottom?
And it finally happened.
He caused a 4-car pileup on Highway 119 in Caldwell Mill Road. No one was injured, but deputies found drug residue in the trunk of the car. He had violated the terms of his probation. He was 23 years old.
Nothing is more difficult than seeing your son handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and taken to jail. But it was a relief, if you can believe it.
Was that a good thing for him?
It was the best thing that could have ever happened to him.
It saved his life.
Shelby County Sheriff Chris Curry convinced the Kellys not to post bond for their son.
For months, he was in our infirmary here in the jail. Terrible withdrawals. Unbelievable faking seizures, having seizures, conduct and behavior, and aggressive and uncooperative.
Withdrawal from methadone and heroin cold turkey is dangerous. It can almost kill you. It almost killed this young man. But after 7 months behind bars, the child Rick and Cheryl had raised began to return to them. They proudly say he's been clean for 5 years. Still,
Once an addict, always an addict. Self-esteem is a real problem with addicts, and that's one of the reasons they do this to themselves. They don't feel good about who they are, and he still struggles with that. Now, at the age of 29, he still struggles.
we thank the Kellys for their story. Their son is working now. He is making new friends, and his family relishes every moment with him. But the Kellys also want every parent to understand that once a child turns 18, the parent has no legal right to know what is going on. So their best advice is don't go into denial. Do whatever is necessary to save your child. Now, this afternoon on Focus at 4, what the medical examiner sees in the death of a heroin user and what you can do to start the conversation in your own home about this incredibly dangerous drug. Sit in a newsroom for a day and listen to scanner traffic, and odds are you will hear a call for a drug overdose. Within minutes, paramedics arrive, and then you hear them say either transporting or call for a coroner. If the person overdosed on heroin, the EMT has literally seconds to try to save the life of someone dying in vain.
It's equivalent to experimenting with Russian roulette.
Dr. Robert Brissy is medical examiner for Jefferson County. The picture he paints of a heroin death is not one any parent wants to see.
Frequently you may find the needle still in the arm. More often you find a spoon with some burn marks on the bottom where they had cooked part of it to put it into solution. And then you have a belt or something like that that was used as a tourniquet, and they'll be a very short distance from that, and they just die apparently very quickly.
Emergency Department physician David Piggott did his medical training in Manhattan. It was commonplace to see heroin users. Piggott came to UAB 10 years ago. He didn't begin to see heroin abuse here until 2 to 3 years ago. He has treated heroin victims as young as their late teens.
When it's injected, the onset is extremely rapid, within seconds. And the goal, obviously, for people that are using heroin is to try to obtain some sort of euphoria, some kind of high, but the risk is basically respiratory arrest. Basically, they stop breathing. And, you know, with the lack of oxygen, you can be dead in 4 minutes.
One drug carried by EMTs may offer the only hope for a person who just overdosed on heroin.
For patients who have stopped breathing completely, there is a reversal agent, Narcan or naloxone, that can reverse the respiratory failure.
Heroin users understand the risk they're taking. Did you ever OD at any time?
Well, I've actually flatlined once, and they had to bring me back with a defibrillator.
You have lost people.
Several. My best friend, my cousin. You just block it out. Yeah, you try to use the drug, did not think about it.
I've lost a lot of friends. a bunch of people that were really close to me.
And this was on heroin?
On heroin.
I watched the needle take another man. Gone, gone, the damage done.
The danger, the damage, yet nothing matters more than the next hit.
Some people will sell, some people will steal, and some people will steal money, and a lot of girls will sell their bodies for it.
All of that for something that promises euphoria, but too often produces death.
There's obviously no labels on the drug that they're getting on the street, so they have no way of knowing what they're getting.
So you get a much higher concentration. Now, if you've got a person that has been using heroin and they've developed a tolerance for morphine, and you can get about a 20-fold increase in tolerance if you gradually move up before you're at substantial risk of overdose. And they give another person an injection of heroin that is the amount that they use, it might very well kill them. I think that over the past 2 years, the deaths from heroin have gone up, 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 and it's quite possible it'll get much worse.
With 36 confirmed heroin deaths already this year in Jefferson County alone, and several more suspected heroin deaths still pending toxicology reports, Dr. Brissy believes that we will see more than 50 deaths from heroin overdoses by the end of 2012. Next, it's going to take your help to save your sons and daughters from dying in vain. My concluding report comes later this hour. Since January 2012, Jefferson, Shelby, and Tuscaloosa counties have recorded more than 50 deaths of young people from heroin. 90% of the victims were young Caucasian men and women. Now, if you live in an over-the-mountain community, don't be naive. The drug is here. The question is, what are you going to do to save the children who are dying in vain?
It's a lot closer than they think it is.
And it's not going away.
It's not going away. It's just getting worse.
A young heroin addict's warning must not fall on deaf ears.
The best advice I give to parents is stay vigilant with their children. Have conversations even when the conversations may be uncomfortable.
Carissa Anthony is the director of the Hoover Coalition, created to prevent youth drug and violence.
Know what your children are doing. Give them big hugs whenever they come in and sniff and observe them, observe their eyes, their behavior. Be aware of their behavior at other times. Is there a change? Are they becoming withdrawn? Stay engaged with your children. Set high expectations and hold them accountable.
But my child? How many of you have said, I trust my child?
It's not about trusting your child. It's about the fact that their judgment center is not well developed yet. So be their judgment center.
This is a war that must be fought in the home, even as law enforcement battles it on the streets.
Here's what I can say, Pam. I can tell you that the law enforcement community as a whole in the Birmingham area is aware of our heroin supply issue, and we are taking very active steps and really using multi-pronged strategies to address that issue.
Law enforcement is at the end of the cycle. What needs to happen is to stop the demand for the product.
If parents will take it very seriously when young people start to abuse alcohol or marijuana, for example, if they intervene at that point, they may be able to prevent a tragedy.
Lieutenant Davis says a 17-year-old girl is the youngest heroin death he has seen in Jefferson County.
Know where they go. Know what's in their room. Risk hurting your child's feelings a little bit is better than waiting until there's a serious drug problem that you have to deal with in a rehab.
If your child's mad at you because you misguessed, okay. That's okay. They'll get over that mad.
You'll still have a child
You'll
alive.
still have a child, absolutely.
Addicts become good liars. Don't fall into the trap.
And they didn't want to accept the fact that they knew I was addicted to something.
This is a community-wide problem, and no family is immune from the risk.
U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance believes law enforcement will make significant inroads into breaking the heroin supply chain within the next few months. But you can't wait.
The most important advice for parents is don't be afraid to confront this situation head on. That talk could guarantee that your child is sitting at the family dinner table come Thanksgiving or Christmas time.
If the stories you have seen this week have scared you, concerned you, made you wonder, good. You are the first line of defense in this war against heroin. Our community already has lost too many of its young people to this killer. If you have more questions, contact your local police department, your sheriff's office, the U.S. Attorney, or the Drug Enforcement Administration. We must save our children from dying in vain. More in a moment.